bring home 2 titles today. It's going to be on like Donkey Kong. And cheers everywhere else. What's going on, y'all? Again, we got day 6 here. We're going to go over accountability, community, and relationships to facilitate your overall healthy lifestyle. Boom, we're getting up here on Amazon. Et voila. Good. Now let's get it here on Instagram. And bam. So we're just getting our coffee together, getting our morning tea. Again, it's early on a Saturday. When I say early, I mean early-ish for us. I mean, been up since 5:30, but
yeah,
getting our tea, getting our water.
Like 6:30 or 7, but
bring it on in, Carrie. Also, can we just like say, great shirt, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yes. I haven't worn this one in a while.
So what we're going to do is, again, this is going to be more of a conversation base. If you guys want to interact, ask questions, feel free to.
Misha.
Oh, hey, what's up?
Misha's making a feature.
Yeah, Misha's going to swing by. Maybe today you guys will actually be able to see Misha live.
Her head was just on TikTok and Instagram.
You get to see the whole body.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get your whole body in here. And then what I will do is I'll present on a couple of slides, but most of this we wanted to just be conversations and going over products to add value for you guys ultimately with
There's
everything
Misha.
we've talked about all week. There's Misha's.
Misha. Misha, sit.
Misha.
Good girl. You can see the ears.
So if you guys are wondering, Misha is a purebred German Shepherd.
Here, say
Black
hi,
on
Misha.
black on black.
Say hi.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of, sort of. She really just wants to look at me because she's like, are you going to pet me? Are you going to give me
What are we doing?
food? Right.
What are we doing? We're going to get
Anyway.
super cozy, getting in here. And again, we're going to go through. So this is the goal is to make it more of a.
Well, all right.
Misha's getting excited. Make it a bit more of a conversation.
Sit.
We'll present. Again, I'll share some slides, bit of the screen. But the overall value today is the actionable takeaways and being able to troubleshoot things. So if you even want to share this with anyone you think can add value, the biggest thing, I'm going to hit you guys with the takeaway before we even get to the end. The one thing I want you guys to do by the end of this presentation workshop, whatever you want to call it, is have an accountability buddy, at least one.
Yeah.
Whether you have an entire community or tribe, like shout out to Rogue Combat Club. It's a great community for anyone that's from Rogue watching this. You already got like kind of a built-in tribe. You already probably know that. But lean on that. Reach out. Like we get to support one another. But I want you guys to at least find one person. I would invite you to pause right now. Find someone in your phone. You can text, say, hey, are you down to be my accountability buddy? And find someone that has a similar goal to you as well. Yeah, thanks for it, Justin. Yeah. And if you have struggles with that, you're unsure, we'll cover some strategies. We'll talk through it. And then Carrie actually had a really good idea on Amazon. I had some of the books that I wanted to go through and resources for you guys, planners, ways to evaluate our habits. Our 28-day reset. When I say ours, I mean the lifestyle of fitness, our actual book. But there's some really cool books by like Brene Brown, for example, that she talks about vulnerability has been the biggest thing I got from her, but also boundary setting.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a key thing with relationships we'll get into as well. But I want to pause and then Carrie, I'm curious your thoughts on like what's the biggest thing you want someone to take away from this talk today? And then we'll circle back to that at the end too to recap it.
Well, I'm always kind of speaking from my own personal experience and journey and what I found helpful. So one thing I will say is if you're really committed to your own health and well-being, you need to understand that that's going to imply that many things in your life might have to change. And there are things that you wouldn't necessarily think are directly connected to your mental health, your physical health, but they are. And one of those things is the people you surround yourself with. So, you know, we don't choose the family we're born into. We don't necessarily choose the place where we live. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're having a lot of trouble bringing health and wellness into your life and your world because you're getting pushback from really negative family members or unhealthy friends or toxic relationships that you've had for a very long time that you feel beholden to, part of committing to a healthy state of mental and physical well-being is recognizing who in your life gives you energy or inspiration, or at the very least is like a flat line, you know, like doesn't bring you down, and who in your life might be a little bit of a drag on your energy or not unsupportive, or, you know, just has a lot of really bad habits necessarily that you want to start to avoid or steer away from. And, you know, that might mean at certain points along your journey, cutting people out of your life. And I'm not saying like you have to write people off, but temporarily removing yourself from situations where you're, you know, involved with people that are just bringing you down or are energetically draining can be really helpful. I've done that in my life before, even with immediate family members. You know, there's been like a year period of time where I didn't talk to an immediate family member, or, and it maybe wasn't even necessarily about them. It was really just like, hey, I need a break. I need to focus on myself. I have to focus on what I'm doing. And this is energetically really draining. And then when you're in a better place, you can totally revisit those relationships with a different perspective, and they can be far less draining, or you can be much more clear about the boundaries you need to set with people in your life so that you can continue maintaining a healthy mental and physical state of well-being. So Michael and I talked a little bit this morning about how temporarily setting boundaries in your life with people can be really helpful. And I think of one of the easiest examples I give when I'm talking to people about quitting anything or starting a new habit is your environment is really going to make or break your success or failure. I mean, I'm a very type A, strong-willed person. Michael is very strong-willed as well. But having a really unhealthy environment, I don't care how resilient you are, if you're surrounded by negativity, if you're in a job you hate, if you're living somewhere that's very uninspiring, you're really setting yourself up for failure. Because we are, despite anything we like to believe about ourselves, we are definitely a product of our environment. And that can be used to benefit. If you're like, hey, I'm a product of my environment, let me create an environment where I'm going to achieve have a higher potential for success, then great. But by the same token, if you're like, I'm a product of my environment and this environment is toxic, the people I'm around are toxic, I'm constantly feeling drained of energy, that's something you really need to look at and think about, adjusting in your life. But yeah, one of the easiest examples I say is smoking, right? So if you're going to quit smoking and you decide, hey, this is for my health, like I want to grow old, I have kids, whatever the reasons are, I need to quit smoking. I want to have better lung capacity. When you first decide you want to quit smoking, you're going to inherently, if you're smart, avoid environments where people are going to be smoking or where you're going to be tempted to smoke. If you have a lot of associative things, like this is the same with like family members and boundaries. If you have a lot of associations with like your mom or your brother or your sister or your best friend, it's very hard to start to craft new habits and new identities if you're consistently in an environment that has very strong associations. So if you're a smoker and you play pool, and you always go to the pool hall and everyone's smoking, and that's a place where you like to smoke, you would want to avoid the pool hall in the early days of quitting smoking. Now, that doesn't mean a year from your quitting smoking endeavor that you can't go back there and not be tempted. You'll be a very different person with different perspective, and you'll have flexed that muscle long enough to where you can find yourself in these more, let's say, quote unquote, toxic environments and still stick to your healthy habits and uphold those. But in the early days, your environment is going to be crucial to your success or your failure.
Boom. All right.
Yeah, it's kind of a long-winded mind about it.
Bam. And we're just sticking with us, playing with the angles, the views. And again, if you guys are watching on TikTok, Instagram, whatever the platform is, we also have it going on Amazon. So you can actually see some of the books we're going to be referencing or some of the things as tools you can have. Also, the cool thing, TikTok has their shop. So we'll tag and repurpose some content from that as well. But to piggyback, one of the other things I wanted to invite, part accountability, but it's really mindset, going back to that mindset component, but it ties back into this with the smoking example or any analogy is instead of what I would invite when you guys are wording things, even with your family, your friends, because this is something I give presentations on with digital detox. And we talk about this component, communicate with your environment, whether it's professionally, personally, and everywhere in between. Use wording that speaks into your goals. So for example, again, I don't smoke. Versus I'm trying to quit smoking, I don't smoke. So if someone said, hey, do you want to go out for a quick cigarette break? No, I don't smoke. Not, oh, I'm trying to quit.
Right.
There's a big difference in your perspective as well as intention. And again, this comes up in a variety of different like videos and posts I've seen over the years. But what you, like the story you tell in your brain, you will continuously look to affirm that.
Yeah.
So if you still associate as a smoker and you're like, I'm trying to quit, you'll find reasons either to smoke or why you can't quit or whatever that looks like. But if you're like, no, I just don't smoke, that's a way different perspective. And again, speaking that into your community, into your friends, into your relationships, so they can align and respect whatever boundaries and goals you're setting. And if they don't, that's like the other part to what you were kind of alluding to, right? Or what you're directly speaking to is being able to create space, not because it's any ill will towards that person, but hey, this isn't in my best interest.
Right.
And I'm going to look out for myself in this perspective. And by me looking out for myself, hopefully that invites you to take care of yourself. It is actually an inspiration, not something that takes away.
Yeah, that's a really important point to think about. Like, and this culture, I'll say, there seems to be a lot of like, especially with immediate family, there's a lot of feelings of guilt and shame and manipulation that happen, just not by anyone's direct fault. A lot of it's very unconscious, but these certain dynamics where we fill roles and spaces for one another. And then there's like this guilt and shame factor when you're like, hey, I like recognize I want to craft a new identity, or I really need to like shift my mentality. I need to shift my lifestyle. Like this isn't working for me. Sometimes immediate family members or very close interpersonal relationships can make it very difficult in the beginning for you to do that, because it unconsciously gives them a level of discomfort. Sometimes, I'm not saying this is always the case, but unconsciously it can be very uncomfortable to family members when you're shifting and changing, because they're used to you showing up in a certain way. They're used to, certain patterns of interactions with you. And so for a time, it can be helpful to, again, separate yourself so that you can craft that new identity. And then to Michael's point, what's great about it is instead of feeling guilty, like, oh, I feel so bad, I haven't talked to my brother in 6 months, or, I feel so bad, I keep dodging my best friend because I'm trying to quit smoking and they smoke and it's just really hard for me or whatever. When you come back as that new realized person, or when you come back and you've embodied a different kind of sense of self and you're feeling better about yourself, now you're offering, not even as a direct, but as a byproduct, you're offering inspiration to the other person to perhaps quit their smoking or stop with their toxic habits or whatever it is. And not saying that you should do anything or make any decisions based on how other people might show up, because that's not the way to go about it. We're just saying that pretty much because humans are very social creatures, a lot of times making positive, healthy choices and habits and just showing up as a better version of yourself will offer inspiration to other people and just create ultimately a better environment for you. And this might be, a year, 5 years, 10 years down the line, but it's still valuable to put the work in, especially when we're talking about those really close relationships like family or very close friends that you're going to know probably for the rest of your life. And at the very least, even if no one shows up differently, you have a better, healthier perspective. You're being more well-rounded, and you'll probably find that you'll have a lot less friction and conflict as a result of putting in that work.
Bingo. Yeah. And I think to that point, being able to, one of the other things, this is like such a like classic reference for me. If anyone has seen A Bronx Tale, there's a scene from A Bronx Tale. And so I'm going to try and like extrapolate this and make it make sense in this context. Mm-hmm. So there's a particular person that one of the characters in the movie is owed money by that person. The person keeps dodging them.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So he's like, this dude owes me $20. What should I do? And he's like, do you like this guy? He's like, no, not really. He's kind of annoying, whatever, but he owes me money. I'm like, so basically what you're telling me is like, now this dude's out of your life for $20. You got off pretty cheap. Yeah. And what I mean by all this, the way I reframe it into what our lifestyle is like, okay, yeah, I just can't I can't get whatever this group is or this person to like buy into supporting me or to respecting whatever the goal is. Right. And even if they're not consciously doing it, maybe it's a subconscious. I'll give you guys an example that I'll speak to from not my family, but a childhood friend that I grew up with. This person really was very health conscious, but their entire family, minus them, was not. They were all obese and didn't really take care of themselves. And they felt, from my observations and opinion, intimidated and impacted by their focal point. So they're trying to like weigh at them and pull them like, just come have this. It's Thanksgiving or whatever the reason is.
Yeah.
And the point is, okay, if this person doesn't want to align with your goals, being able to say, okay, cool, good. Now I got off easy in the sense of not that it's easy, but you get to look at that and invite, okay, you're not going to align with how I want to live my life. Doesn't mean you're not my family. Doesn't mean I don't love you. Even if it's a friend, doesn't mean, hey, I don't respect you as a person in certain contexts. Right. It's just, this won't serve me. This type of relationship doesn't serve me. It's probably not going to serve you because there's going to be undertones of resentment or resistance or whatever that looks like.
Just energetic friction between the two different opposing philosophies. Yeah.
And being able to recognize that, which is hard. Like, I got to be honest, I struggle with that even sometimes to this day, letting go of certain relationships or aspects of relationships or even identities within myself that may not serve me.
Yeah. I think that's something that all of us probably continually struggle with throughout our life. And we're shifting, right? We're not like static creatures. So we're constantly changing at certain points. Like, let's say when you first start working out, you have a friend who's super into working out and you're like, great, cool. Let me link up with this friend and feed off of some of that energy and inspire myself to work out. But then you get to a certain point in working out where you want to expand and do other things like meditation. And this other friend is like, they just work out and they're go, 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 and they don't like to slow down. So maybe you're like, okay, now this friend isn't really serving the other goals that I have. So I'm going to limit my time or create a boundary in how I interact with this friend. I'll see them in the gym and interact with them there. But outside of that, I'm going to have really firm boundaries so that I can work on my meditation practice or work on my mindfulness practices and slow down and read books and journal and all these different things. So it's a continual shifting and recognizing of what's serving you and how you can create win-win situations with family members and friends and what isn't, and being honest and upfront about those things. That's something that we want to touch a little bit on, is like, communication is so important. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, especially when, you know, you're coming from a place where you want to make changes and you want to shift and you don't really believe in yourself in the beginning. You're like, you know, I want to be this new person, but, you know, I'm not sure if I can do it. I don't really know, like, this is really hard for me, or this is all new information. You know, I don't know how to start a meditation practice, whatever. So communicating about those things to people who you can, number one, count on to support you and be supportive in any kind of situation is really helpful, because you don't necessarily, it's not that they're going to solve anything for you, but just being able to express how you're feeling and express your doubts and get them off of your chest, and have someone, you know, give you a little bit of inspiration or support can make or break, especially in the early days when you're starting a new practice. And then to that point, consciously seeking out communities where you know that you're going to get the support. So in very specific cases, like let's say you want to start a meditation practice. No one you know has ever meditated. You don't have any mentors. You don't know who to go to. You're just starting with your 5 minutes a day, the basic, you know, instructions that I gave earlier. And you're kind of like, you know, you're feeling around in the dark. Well, you can go online and find virtual communities of people who meditate, or you can read the book of, you know, a high advanced practitioner, or you can seek out, you know, a mentor in your area. You can specifically reach out and look to, again, create the environment that's going to give you a higher level of success. So there's lots of different ways to have community. You don't necessarily, you're not stuck, let's say, with like the people you know, or what you're born with. It's just a matter of, again, having the resilience in yourself to show up for yourself, to bet on yourself, and be willing to cut people out or set boundaries where you need to, and then go after and create the connections that you need to succeed. And that's like a forever long balance that you constantly need to remain aware of and shift. There's times in my life where I've had mentors that were really helpful, and then I reached a certain point where those mentors weren't really necessary anymore, or they didn't make sense, or I was growing in a different way. And the more you do it, like anything else, the more you flex that muscle, the more you practice recognizing who in your life is serving you and how you're serving them, creating these win-win scenarios, the more you'll start to recognize where those don't exist, how it's an energy drain. And it's not really worth it for either person, like trying to fit a square peg through a round hole. You know, like, this is okay. We're showing up because what? We're used to it. We have history. We feel obligated. Yeah, we feel obligated. There's guilt here. There's this manipulation going on. Like,
where there's comfort, associative comfort. Like, oh, this is familiar. The familiarity of it. Like, what's the expression? The devil I know versus the devil I don't know.
Yeah, the devil I know is better than the devil I don't. Yeah. So like, there's a lot of fear when you're stepping out into a new place. So yeah, really just thinking. And that can be its own practice, to be honest. There's been times in my life where I've actually just sat down and been like, you know what? I'm going to sit and think about the people I spend the most time with. Let's think about the top 5 or the top 10 people I spend the most time with. I'm going to write down their names. I'm going to think about how often I spend time with them, starting with number 1 being the one I spend the most time with, and number 10, let's say, being the one I spend the least time with. When I spend time with them, what does that context look like? Okay, if it's a friend, well, I meet them in coffee shops, we exchange notes, we're going to the same class, whatever it is, right? And then think really about how you feel. How do I feel when I interact with this person? When I leave a situation where I've spent an hour with this person, do I feel energized? Do I feel recharged? Do I feel inspired? Or do I feel drained? Do I feel tired? Do I feel like I'm not looking forward to seeing them again? And getting really clear and being kind of like objective and unbiased about what your relationships look like and how you feel as a result of interacting with those people. And then it's going to become really clear, if you do sit down and do that, who you want to engage with more and who you want to set more boundaries with in a very, in a healthy way. You don't want to blame anyone for your success or failure. You want to take responsibility for it, but that's really what we're talking about here. By recognizing how you feel around people and how you serve them and they serve you, you're taking responsibility for your potential success or failure. So yeah, I don't know what else you got for that.
And just to begin, I've been just tinkering through to see slides that I think represent visually to share with you guys. That's why I'm kind of looking through it to pick out as we go through that. But the component, what's up, Zippy? Welcome back. And the component of that to this point though, is being able to, and I'm kind of going through, this is a slide I wanted to share from actually our other talk the other day, but it brings up this point that I always like to come back to in almost anything we're doing. It becomes significant. And the visual I'm going to share with you guys is a readiness of change scale. And what that means is if we were to take how ready are you for change on a scale of 1 to 10, for example, it's one of the ways we look at it. Where are you at? The reason I highlight this is even if you're asking for accountability and you're working on setting boundaries, if you're not actually ready for the change, from my experience, here's what happens. I'll just lay out a personal scenario. I claim I'm going to do something, or I say, this is my goal. And I go to my community and I say, hey, this is what I'm working on. I express it vulnerably to them, but I'm actually not really ready. Let's say if I want to stop consuming THC for a period of time, I went through pretty much the last year. I hadn't consumed any THC. So when I had first done this, there's probably a lot of skepticism from people around me because I had like done it on and off. The most I'd ever done is when I would go through fight camps when I was professionally fighting or even as an amateur, I would not consume THC during a fight camp. And then I'd maybe have a couple week window where I would. And then when I retired, I just kind of like freely did whatever I wanted. Point of saying all this is the buy-in and your readiness. Because if you continuously ask for boundaries or try and create boundaries, you're not actually ready for it. Your community may become skeptical. The people around you may become skeptical. And that's okay in that sense. They're not wrong for that.
Right.
Just, this is something I even learned from Choice when I was going through an emotional intelligence course. What they invited, like, hey, just because you feel this transformation's taken place, which it has, when you go home, no one knows the transformation that you just created. So you get to day in and day out prove it. So I want to just visually do a little screen share with you guys. I'm going to present on this. And I'm looking at my backup computer, so I'm pretty sure the screen share will work.
Excuse me.
I can't do it on this one because I got to give settings. So we're going to give it an extra second. I'm going to give it settings. But the point is looking at where we are. So if you think from a numerical standpoint, 1 to 10, we want to be 7, 8, 9, or 10 on, do I feel like I'm ready to commit to this? Yeah. Or if we think on the other readiness of change scale, there's what's called pre-contemplation. So you're not even like thinking about it. It's not even on your radar. Your doctor maybe said, hey, I think you should quit smoking, but you're like, nah, I'm not going to do that. Then there's contemplation. Your doctor said quit smoking. You're like, all right, maybe I should. My doctor's saying this. Then there's the actual planning stage. Like, okay, I'm going to consider, what does that look like? I'm going to try and do X, Y, or Z. Then there's the action stage where you actually take action on it. And then the goal is once you've taken that action long enough, you get to transition to a maintenance stage where you're maintaining this habit you've created for yourself, which is usually a lower resistance layer, but it's getting there is the tricky part. So the point is look and really honestly think about yourself when it comes to these goals and creating this, accountability buddy system or the community. Doesn't mean don't express to them, even if you're not certain. Just realize if you do that, and if you don't succeed, that's okay too. But the reality is there may be an impact to that. And that's kind of from my experience, why there's hesitation for a lot of us to want to do that. For sure. So I want to help us and invite the idea of like, don't be attached to what others think as easy. Sounds simple, right? Simple doesn't mean easy. Yeah. But now I want to, and I'm curious your thoughts on the action list. So I'm thinking these things theoretically, but I feel like I've worked on them personally. I'll share what I've done action-wise, but I'm curious for you, Carrie, like what have been some action steps that you've done to facilitate the ability to, you were going back before, like, hey, taking break from personal family, maybe a period of time. What allowed you to do that? Like you said, the X's and O's, but like what allowed that to happen prior?
Yeah, I'll say, really what it comes down to is as simple as it is, but again, simple doesn't mean easy, is it comes down to decision. So you have to really look inside of yourself and be very self-honest. So, and that's part of the process, right, of mental and physical health is self-integrity. We talk about integrity a lot. This is an idea that's tossed around. Everyone's like, well, integrity sounds great on paper, but a lot of times the person that we delude the most is ourselves, because a lot of us like to, we like to idealize the version of ourselves in our mind that we want to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. We do want to have something to aim to, but being very self-honest about where you are, being honest about what your reasons for why you're doing what you're doing are. And what I used to have, I actually have this video on YouTube from a few years ago that I did called The Little Payoffs That the Ego, I can't remember exactly the title, but it's basically a video about how the ego has a lot of little payoffs that we don't necessarily consciously have awareness of, but there's a lot of reasons why we might engage in unhealthy behavior that serve us in another way. And it's not always clear that it's serving us. And we're like, gosh, why do I keep doing this to myself? Why do I keep behaving this way? It's not serving me. It's not serving me. Well, in some ways it is. It's just that the payoffs are often things that we don't want to look at because they're kind of like self-serving and they don't seem good on paper, but they're still self-preserving. So really looking at the reasons why we're doing what we're doing and getting to a place within yourself where you're being very honest and you're recognizing either, yes, I want to make this change. I'm willing to do, this is going to sound extreme, but this is really how it needs to be. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this change. And once you've really reached that point where you're like, I don't care what it takes, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this change. I'm not going to live the life I've been living anymore. Like, you're basically tired of it. You just run out of steam. You're like, I'm not going to smoke anymore. I don't want to be this person. I'm tired of it. And I'm ready to do whatever it takes to transition. When you reach that point, there are a lot of things that you'll be surprised you might find inspiration or willingness to do that maybe 6 months ago you didn't have willingness. But sadly for me, I'll say a lot of times it's like I reach a point of desperation. But I think that's pretty relatable for most people, right? Like, you find yourself 100 pounds overweight and, you get to a point where you're like, I'm tired of being tired. I'm tired of feeling this way. I'm tired of not fitting in my clothes. I'm tired of like not being able to show up for my kids. I'm done living this life, and it feels really bad inside. And you're like, you just hit this point of desperation where you just decide. Now, for most of you, I hope that it can look a little nicer than that. It can be like, you can just make the shift in your mind. I'm not saying it has to take a point of desperation. I'm just saying that's been quite effective for me. And I think a lot of people can relate to just reaching a point where you don't care anymore what it takes. You're just done being the person that you've been. And I think that that's a really ripe, beautiful place to find yourself. And there's a lot of beauty in reaching what I call the bottom of the well. And in the cases, like you said, where I would cut family out, those came from those places where I was just tired of doing the same old thing. I needed a drastic shift. And I all of a sudden had the energy freed up to do it because I cut a bunch of tethers in my life that I felt like I won't even say were weighing me down. In some cases, there was a lack of clarity around certain relationships or certain things. And I cut all the strings. I forged the new identity or the new self or the new way of being, and then gradually rebuilt those things as a result of my own newfound clarity and perspective and better habits. So, yeah.
Ooh, so I want to tag in, I finally got the slide deck to show up. So if you guys are watching on TikTok or Instagram, you're not going to see the screen share. So if you want to hop on over to Facebook or Amazon or YouTube, wherever, you can see the link in our profile to see the actual slide deck. We're also going to be sending replays and all these resources to everyone that's on our newsletter. So if you're on the newsletter, you've probably seen emails and follow-up. If you're not on the newsletter, just hop on over to our link tree, get on there. It's free for you guys. But the stage I've highlighted of the 5, maybe technically 6 stages, is the action stage. And the reason I'm highlighting this, because I was talking about, hey, you might not even be thinking about it. That's not the time to bring it to your community.
Yeah.
Mostly, in my opinion, where it is in this stage 4, when you're ready to take action, right? So the characteristics, taking direct action towards that goal to create, I don't even like change. I should really swap that to transformation.
Yeah.
There's a difference between transformation and change.
Yeah.
Change, there's the potential to go back.
Right. I'm changing my clothes.
Yeah. A caterpillar doesn't change into a butterfly. It transforms into a butterfly because it never goes back. From what I've seen, I've never seen a butterfly go back to a caterpillar. Maybe that exists somewhere in the world. I've never heard of it. Wow. So that idea of transformation is huge. But again, you're ready to take action. Then bring it to your community. You've already started to. So we already did stage 3.
Right.
You even did you went through all the stage, right? Let's start stage 1, pre-contemplation. You're not even thinking about it. Your family might be saying stuff. Other people might be saying stuff, whomever your doctor, but you're not ready. Yeah. That's not the time. Then you're thinking about it. You're all right, I'm going to entertain it. My doctor said this, my coach, someone said I'm overweight.
Stage 2, contemplation.
Yeah. This is where I got cut from the baseball team, right? I told this story. I'm like, all right, now I'm contemplating, I need to make a change. Then it was, all right, now I'm preparing to make a change. I'm getting a coach, talking to my doctor, writing out my goals. So stage 3 is write the goal out. Still not the time to bring it to your community and get that accountability yet. When you're ready to go to stage 4, where you're action oriented, you're taking that action, right? You're ready to do it. Then bring it to your social group, your community, your work environment, your home environment. That's the place. Doesn't mean you still might not have some setbacks or some things to overcome, but the likelihood of you having success, because you already wrote the goal down, you created a clear plan, you're confident in it, you've addressed potential hiccups or barriers that have come along the way. This is where your buy-in from your community will be greater, from my experience and understanding of it. And if not, this is where we get to practice and play with, hey, there's not the same buy-in. I get to reevaluate this community.
Right.
I get to look for a new community.
Use your discrimination.
Because if you're already in the action stage and you're getting resistance, that's where you want to start to really entertain. What do I do? And then the stage 5, maintenance. Again, you're maintaining that new behavior. You're consistently rewarding it, or you already have rewarded it, so it's continuing. And then you get to continuously develop those strategies and action-oriented pieces for when you feel temptation, whether it's THC or smoking or food or exercise or sleep or lack of sleep or whatever that is that does it for you. know that you're going to face temptation at some point, and then have a plan in place, whether it's that accountability buddy, whether it's that community, whether it's another strategy of like, hey, I'm going to journal, or that's why I love going to martial arts gyms, because you've been in martial arts gyms too. Like
for sure.
That communal
built-in
dynamic.
Community. Yeah. People
so
want to see you
strong.
succeed. Yeah.
And they're usually like-minded as well.
Well, and to that point, you know, you can extrapolate the martial arts community and find a meditation community. I mean, here we live in Asheville. There's plenty of them. I can tell you, and early on in my meditation journey, I totally used that. I had in-person meditation sessions with groups of people, and you can find a lot of support. If you're just starting out yoga, same thing. Go to a yoga class, find a community of people who are doing the same thing as you. If you're quitting smoking or quitting anything, let's say you're quitting alcohol or you're quitting, you can go to AA meetings. Even if you're like, you know, you're not totally bought into the whole thing, just having the community aspect of sharing your experience with other people who are in a similar place as you is so helpful. Because if no one else in your family or friends group is supportive, you can count on being able to go to that community and going, okay, everyone here has the same goal as me. So it's gonna increase your chances of success so much more, which is why these programs like AA are still around, right? They've been around for years and years and years. Why? Because they're very successful. They've implemented systems and they know how to help you succeed and how to hold you accountable and continue to show up for you years and years and years later. Every time you do, to your point, hit those roadblocks. Same thing with martial arts communities. You know, everyone wants to see everyone else succeed in these communities because the shared goal is very, very powerful from, you know, an energetic standpoint. The better everyone gets, the better everyone gets. So it serves all of us for everyone to get better. And those are the communities you really want to seek out, even if it's on an online community. You know, if you want to seek out a community for setting healthy boundaries with your family. Okay, this might be a little bit more nuanced and harder to find an in-person community for, but you can totally go online and find people who love Brene Brown or people who, you know, follow authors, groups of people who are reading books about setting boundaries with family, or you can get a therapist and you can ping your therapist and say, hey, you know, I'm having a lot of trouble with setting boundaries with my family. Where can I go? How can I get support? How can I get group support? So there's always a way, as long as you just keep an open mind. And again, to his point, you're at these stages where you're ready to take action. You're done doing the same old thing. And you want to maintain a new identity or lifestyle.
This is the way.
Yeah.
Mandalorian peeps, you know what's up. But so the last thing I want to tag in is the stage 6 I alluded to before, which I don't commonly discuss, is the quote unquote relapse stage.
Yeah.
The reason I want to touch on this is to normalize you're not perfect. Fun fact. I'm not perfect. No one's perfect.
I'm definitely perfect.
For sure. But you are for sure going to face times where you're going to either be tempted or have a quote unquote relapse. I don't even like necessarily or love that phrasing.
Yeah.
Whether it's sobriety, whether it's food, exercise, like the examples they give are, you know, got busy at work and missed a few walking sessions or exercise sessions, or went to a party and smoked a cigarette or had a cigar or smoked a joint or whatever the thing, had a drink, had like.
One of my favorite ones is I got sick. Because I tell you what, you get sick for a couple weeks and that will really test all of your healthy habits.
Yeah. And your wherewithal, like what you thought was possible. So the point of that is to normalize. You are going, if you can anticipate from working with clients and just psychologically studying this and seeing it across the board, when you can anticipate there's going to be this stage coming up, it's way less of a hit in the face. Like again, Mike Tyson, famous quote, everyone's got a plan until they got hit in the mouth. If you know you're getting hit in the face and you've been hit in the face before, in this analogy, it's way easier to bounce back, throw the next combo. It's way easier to take that next step. But if it's the first time you've ever been punched in the mouth and you weren't planning on it, that's going to stun you way more. Yeah. So know that you're going to face a relapse stage. Yeah. And if you never face a relapse stage,
wonderful.
Awesome. Yeah. Like, good on you.
You are the smallest percentile.
Here's how you can know before you even hit the relapse stage from some of the character, what it's going to feel like, but also prior to even feeling that or getting to the relapse stage, you might have some onset characteristics. Like you may start to feel frustration. You may feel like a failure, even though you're doing these things. You may start to feel like, but I'm a failure anyway. It's just inevitable. I feel these temptations. Like these are even stories I had throughout the last year of like not consuming THC. It's like, man, I could really like, it'd be nice. It's raining outside right now. I'd love to go sit outside and like, you know, just have
all of our associations.
Whatever the touch points are. Right. So just anticipate you're going to do that. Again, strategy, being able to identify those triggers. So for me, knowing when I'm stressed or around a certain group of people, I'm going to be more likely to want to do said behavior. Yeah. So either A, I'm going to bounce out early once I feel it or not hang around those people. Yeah. We're going to recognize whatever those barriers are and then plan for them. And then finally, being able to reaffirm the goal and commit to yourself and to that transformation. So coming back to that's why I like having certain words on the wall, affirmations, visual cues, and communicating with those people. So let's say I show up to a party, I'll paint you a scenario, or even I'm hanging out with a friend and I've already expressed to them, hey, I'm like not smoking right now, I'm not consuming THC. And they are, for whatever, be like, hey man, I'm not going to bring it around you because I don't want to tempt you. Cool. But one day I reach out, I'm like, hey, can you like bring some like things to like an edible or whatever, and be like, oh, but I thought you're not. Like, yeah, but I just really want to. But like, you know what? I'm just not going to. Versus the person say, all right, I got you, dude. Don't worry, I'll bring it. You get to recognize that and start to, again, communicate so they can help set you up for success. So even though you're taking action, you're lining up where there's the potential for relapse to kick in and setting yourself up for success with it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to stop screen sharing here. And then again, we can kind of like bounce off of that. I'm curious to hear if that brings up questions or other thoughts. And then we'll probably start to slowly bring it home because we have honestly got to like head out in like 10 minutes, give or take.
Yeah,
we're getting close. We're going to go corner some fighters. We got 2 titles to bring home today for our kickboxing and Muay Thai fighters. Shout out to them. But I'm curious. I kind of went on a bit of a passionate kind of like monologue there for a hot minute. So I'm curious what questions that brings up, and Carrie, what you want to potentially tag in with that. Even the thought, what do you think about that idea of like accepting there's going to be a potential relapse, accepting that potentiality?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings on it.
That's why I'm curious your thoughts. That's how
I'm always coming from the energetic side of things, and I'm coming from the. Thank you, Misha. That was a very nice kiss. Here, can you get out of the way, sweetie? Thank you. Sit down. Good girl.
But just so good.
I'm always coming from this perspective of what you believe about yourself will shape your reality. So obviously there's going to be things that reality throws curveballs. Like this is one of the things you can guarantee is that if you're not 100%, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you're not 100% on board with whatever decision you're making, whatever change you're making, which in the beginning, let's be honest, most of us aren't at 100%. We're still like new territory, forming new identities. There's still a lot of uncertainty, maybe steps where you need to build confidence and certainty in which way you want to go. So what reality will inevitably present to you is temptation. So just taking for granted that you're going to be tempted in the beginning is good, because if you're already aware, hey, I'm going to be tempted and I can't wait for those temptations to show up because I am so sure of the decision I'm making. I believe in myself so much that you can tempt me with whatever it is. And I'll take that temptation as an opportunity to recognize, I'm going in the right direction because here came the temptation. I said no to the temptation and I'm moving in this direction. So again, we've had different talks on the whys. We want to know why we're doing what we're doing, because assume that those temptations are going to come up if you're not 100%. Now, if you feel like I am at 100%, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind. I can already see myself a year from now, a completely different person. Like there's no doubt in my mind that I'm going in the direction I want to go. You might be far less likely to experience a temptation because your belief in yourself, your certainty of where you want to go and who you want to be is so strong that there's just not really a need for reality to tempt you. So I have kind of a woo-woo perspective on these things. Or even let's say if the temptation comes in, you probably wouldn't even notice it because you're so sure, your belief is so hard in the direction of this new identity that you're building, this new habit that you're building, that you wouldn't even notice the temptation. You know, like let's say you get invited to a birthday party. You're like, yeah, sure. I'm at a birthday party. Someone's like, hey, do you want a piece of cake? You're like, no big deal. You wouldn't even necessarily consciously go, oh, that was a temptation, because it's not even registering for you that you're engaging with that anymore. So to the point of belief creates reality. I think if you're thinking in the beginning, like, oh, I'm really unsure. Like if I get tempted, I don't know if I can, withstand the temptation. You believing that you're not going to be able to withstand, you believing that, oh, if I get sick, I'm not going to show up, these things. This is going to kind of shape what's going to come down the pike. So again, those being really honest, having a lot of self-integrity and going, am I really committed to this? Do I really believe in myself? Or journaling. You know, if you're not in a stage where you're really believing yourself, I always use this phrase and people hate it, but fake it till you make it. Find a way to create inspiration. Find a way, spend hours scouring stories of people online who have had success in the area that you're struggling, so that you can see the reflection of yourself. Like, oh, wow, this person was struggling with the same thing I was. And then look at them here a year later doing X, Y, or Z accomplishment. I want that for myself. Keep planting seeds of belief in yourself for having the success. And then your reality will start to kind of conform and present opportunities for you, again, in the form of community, other people, mentors, opportunities. You know, hey, I want to lose 20 pounds. Oh, look, there's a marathon coming up a year from now. If I do this, if I train for a year, these are opportunities for us to double down on ourselves and find belief in ourselves. So I don't want you guys to go into this thinking, I'm going to be tempted. I don't know what I'm going to do, like feeling uncertain. So have honesty with yourself, but recognize that, you know what, I'm not 100% on board yet. I don't know what this new person looks like. I'll probably be tempted, but let me just recognize that those temptations are going to be opportunities for me to double down on myself. That's kind of a better way to frame it. Like, it's going to happen, but how you feel about it really does matter.
And that's what I wonder too, maybe to piggyback on that, is like to have that solidification in your mind of like, this is what I'm doing, but at the same time having, and like, I guess I want more feedback on this. I'm curious about this, because this is where and I'm curious what you guys think as well watching this. This is where I want to make it a conversation a bit more, invite that conversation of, yes, I have like looking at these 3 elements of change, right? Like I have the readiness of change. I'm taking action. I've accounted for the barriers. And then I understand and accept there is a potentiality of temptation to kick in and for me to take action on it. But guess what? I'm not defeated by that, even if that does exist. And I'm going to, again, learn from it, whether I give in or not, or whatever, however you want to word that. But
Right.
being able to learn from it and to continuously move forward. Because there's a really cool visual here. When we think about like old habits, new habits, this doesn't have to be a perfect one-to-one, but continuously walking up the stairs. Even if you kind of like stumble back a couple steps, keep walking up the stairs. Take that next step to solidifying that habit and considering these variables to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, grace is a big thing too, guys. You know, like with any change or just, and even if you think that your life is hunky dory and there's no changes you want to make, giving yourself grace for times when you get sick, when you're having a bad day. This is why community is such an important element, because your community oftentimes will be your grace in the beginning. Because most of us like to beat ourselves up when we're not, doing what we think we should be doing, or we want to, find fun ways to make ourselves feel bad for making quote unquote bad decisions, or, falling back on our old habits and stuff like that. But your community, if your community is supportive and you've had a lot of discrimination, you've put in the effort of building a supportive, healthy community, and you've cut out all the toxicity in your life, when you have those moments where you feel weak or you're sick or you're not feeling at your best or you're relapsing, your community should embrace you with love and grace and understanding. And this will give you the juice, I would say, this will give you the juice to do that to yourself. To, instead of beating yourself up for falling back on a goal that you set or whatever, you feel like, you know what, I deserve love. I deserve grace. This doesn't mean that I'm this failure of a person. It just means that I made this choice. And let me just look at the reasons why I might have made this choice and take it from there. And again, to Michael's point, take that next step and keep moving in that direction. So I think be honest with yourself. Some of us can give that to ourselves a little better. Like I'm in a place in my life where it's very easy for me to give myself love and grace, but it was not that way for many, many years. For most of my life, it was not that way. So find somebody, at least one person, to Michael's point, the action step is find one person that you're going to be able to count on again and again to offer you grace, to offer you support, to offer you, even if it's not advice, just like someone who can listen, offer support and love and grace is like an invaluable asset to you succeeding at anything that you endeavor to do.
Yeah, just to like piggyback on that point of whether it's the fake it till you make it component, or just being able to continuously showing up. This is where like even start small. This is the last slide I wanted to share with you guys, because this one I thought was a helpful tidbit to bring it home with. And again, finding that accountability. That's the one small change you can do right now. If you haven't already, text somebody in your phone, a loved one, a friend, that will be your accountability. And if you have truly nobody in your phone that you feel comfortable bringing that to, DM me or Carrie directly, or wherever you're watching this, you can communicate with us. Reach out to us directly, privately, and we will be your accountability. And that's even where I'll tag in again, going back to the small changes, focus on the one thing to change. So right now, the one thing is having that support, just one person to believe in you, which is massive. Yeah. And then being able to have the interesting byproduct of that is, even if you're focused on this one thing, there will be a ripple effect. Even when you think about the community and the accountability, like how I show up, for example, will impact Carrie indirectly, or Lena, Tessa, Anna, our baby, like Misha, whomever's around us indirectly, because of the ripple effect of it. Yeah. And that will continuously go out, and then it comes back in. When I say so if you think about like a ripple, right, it comes out and then the waves come back in. So being able to drive that point home and come back to it and be able to not say, oh, well, it needs to, for me, it's always like, oh, it needs to be this massive jump. Like I need to see a 100% increase. But if you did, and this is what I love about the owner of Rogue, where I train, and like he talks about this, and he just started another business, 1% better every day. The compounded effect of 1% better on a daily basis, or even if you win 250 out of the 365 days in a year, your net gain is going to be massive, compounded over that year. And this is, I guess, the last quote that I want to say it was like Alex Hormozy or someone else that he had on, is people overestimate what's possible in a year and underestimate what's possible in 10 years.
Yeah.
Because 10 years seems so far out. But if you really think about it, most of us that are watching this, if not all of us, we're going to live another 10 years. So why not plan out for that 10 years? And we don't know. You can't have a guarantee. But plan out the next 10 years versus just the next one and say, hey, all I'm doing along this thread is continuously getting up those steps. And that's like the last thing I wanted to leave it with. I want to see if you guys have questions. And I guess the plug I'll give here from the accountability is, guess what? We have an entire coaching team that can support you. And now, more than ever, since the storm, we've been able to leverage being able to play with insurance. We have 3 spots left of our 10 we're trialing. If you want to use insurance to pay for coaching, so it's a 0 out-of-pocket cost, no deductible, no copay, no matter what your deductible or copay is, we're going to take care of it. And we're going to allow insurance to cover your fees and work with them, so it's not a headache for you. And you'll get that support. It's our thanks to you for being a part of this trial run, because it's going to be a big shift in our ability to reach as many people as possible. That's the whole goal of all this, is to truly transform the world with health.
Yeah.
So what you got, Carrie?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say to your point about underestimating what's possible in 10 years and looking, you can easily, any of us can look back on 10 years and see how far we've come. But really what's interesting is that if you didn't plan for now 10 years ago and you're like, wow, here I am, I've done so well. What is it that's shaped and shifted you over the last years? Well, it's your daily habits. That's exactly it. And that's why we've harped this whole week on, have your 5-minute a day meditation, find your accountability person. Like every single action step you take, very small changes every single day. Okay, I'm going to add 1 serving, like to his point, 1 serving of fruits and veggies a day extra that I wasn't doing before. All of your little shifts in your daily habits, these tiny little 5-degree shifts over 10 years, you're going to look back and go, holy guacamole, I am like such a different person. I feel different. I look different. I present different. Maybe I have completely different people surrounding me than I did 10 years ago. All the people that I was hanging out with 10 years ago, I don't know what they're doing. I have a whole new set of people, so a lot can change in 10 years, but if you're not setting goals will help get you there. But if you're not setting goals, your daily habits are really what's going to make or break who you become. So just be conscious of your daily habits. Be conscious of what choices you're making and why you're making those choices. And hopefully all of you is on board for the ones you decide that you're going to make. It's the age-old analogy, right? Of like, what wolf are you going to feed? Yeah. What deposits are you going to make? You're going to make a deposit or a withdrawal? Right. What I mean, not like a financial one, but into your own habits. What are you depositing in with your actions? Because at a certain point, it becomes unconscious. And now you're creating this, you're just like feeding this loop that's now out of your consciousness, which becomes a really big component. So, and something else I wanted to mention too, if you don't have, like, if you feel like I don't have anyone, or because I hear this a lot too. This is like probably, excuse me, should have mentioned this a little while back. But I hear from a lot of people who are, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's been a handful of people over the years who their reasons for not making the changes is like, my partner is abusive. Ooh, yeah. Or I have this really unhealthy relationship with like my mom or my dad, or like I'm stuck, quote unquote, this idea of just in general, I'm stuck in my situation. Yes. What I notice in the habit and the idea of the belief of I'm stuck because of someone else is just a shirking of responsibility. Just disempowerment. Yeah. And it does, you don't want to victim blame. There are people who are living in very seriously abusive households, but still nobody's really going to come save you from your abusive situation aside from yourself. So if you're if you're in a really dire situation, you don't have any support in your community, or you've been isolated, God forbid, like some abusers are very manipulative. They'll completely isolate you from your community. You're not in a good spot. You have to, at some points in your life, decide again that you're going to take responsibility for yourself and recognize that I'm the only one that can get me out of this. I'm the only one that can take responsibility. I'm the only one that can save myself. And in these scenarios, and the times in my life where I found, I'm not going to say I've been a victim. Maybe I have to some people's standards in different scenarios, but I've always really liked to look at what can I do about my situation instead of being I'm subject to my situation. Something that has been really helpful for me is just accepting the idea that I can be alone and be strong. In the very beginning, like I'm saying, if you haven't built the community yet, I can be alone and be strong. I can be in my community right now. and also specifically seeking out mentors. So there's lots of different ways you can seek out mentors. You can look for people in your community. We talked a little bit about this, but even sometimes I would literally like read an article online written by someone and be like, wow, this really resonates. And I would reach out to that person. I would reach out to the person who wrote that article and say, this is what's going on with me. And I've been able to forge long-term, pen pal connections with random people that I've never met that helped me in dark times, because I just had the intention to be like, okay, how did you, I relate to everything you're saying. How did you get out of this? So if you have no idea where to start, if you have nobody that you can count on, if you feel isolated, take responsibility, be the community for yourself, and find just, again, one person. Doesn't have to be someone find a distant person that writes an article or wrote a book or that you saw on TV. You'd be surprised how many people who seem inaccessible that are on TV or books, whatever. You'd be surprised if you earnestly reach out to those people, how many of them might actually just respond and give you something. And that might be enough for you to give you juice to be like, wow, if this random stranger who's, famous or who wrote this book, who's an expert on this subject can give me advice or reach out to me, I must be worth it.
Yeah, or that. I'll give an example. So
Right.
like, especially if I'm going to share like a personal, I hope you don't mind, but like someone reaching out that saw like Carrie's music on a show in Russia, for example, like it's a big hit, right? On this Russian show, like Carrie has music. It's a great song, by the way. Tessa loves it, right?
Yeah. Oh no, I don't know if that's the one, but it is one of those. I think it might be Time.
That one.
No,
okay.
That one's in a movie. There's a movie in America, a Sundance Film Festival movie that has the magic song in it. But I think the show in Russia is that song Time.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
But regardless, the point is like people will reach out, right, and say, hey, like, are you the person from that song? And like, I'm not surprised. I know how you show up, but I think a lot of times they're surprised, like, oh wow, not only you answered me, but you like sent me a CD.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I'm some famous person, but for some people in some parts of the world, they have the idea or the assumption that I am this famous, untouchable person. So yes, when they reach out, I always get back to them. It might not be immediately, but within a reasonable amount of time, I get back to them. And this particular person, he was looking for the music, couldn't find it anywhere. And I just happened to have an old freaking dusty box of CDs with one of these songs that he liked on him. And I just sent him a song and it just blew his mind that but this is what I mean. Is like for people who are writing books, making movies, doing these things, like they're just regular people. They're only separate from you if you believe in your mind that they're inaccessible or they're better than you in some way, but nobody's better than anybody else. Like we're all just out here, feeling around in the dark and figuring it out. So yeah, reach out to that person, reach out. And if they don't get back to you, whatever, there's more people, but I have found a lot of success in reaching out to random quote unquote famous strangers and getting a fair amount of response that was really positive and helpful. So I wouldn't tell you to do it as an option if I hadn't tried and had some success in it.
And I guess the bow I want to put on top of this, because it just kind of hit with me, is whether you're spiritual, religious, or whatever that falls into, to me, there's a great opportunity to tag in. That's why I believe faith is so impactful.
Yeah. Not
blind faith to the point where you don't question things or not looking at things, but whether it's, if you want to call it spiritual or religious, what God means to you, whatever that is, being able to feel empowered by it. That's what I think is really cool about religion and spirituality. When I've seen, and what I think is really valuable from is my perspective, is when it empowers you, because we're made in God's image, right? From my understanding of how it's based on at least Christianity, right? We're made in God's image. So if I'm made in God's image, isn't that really empowering? Yeah. Or from a spirituality perspective, if I'm love, if I'm source, if I'm God, whatever that thing, whatever you want to word that as, that can be empowering too. And turn within first. If you have nobody, turn to yourself first. And that's why faith, God, source, spirit, love, whatever that is, that's always there for you too. And I think that can be a very potentially accessible point. For some people, it seems so far off in the distance. I would invite, though, discovering that relationship. And that's like, I guess, the bow I want to put on top of all of this. And curious if you have anything to, like, I guess, add to it.
No, I'd say that's very powerful. Yeah. If you're in that space where you're really lonely, you don't have anyone, like I said, turning to yourself, and yourself could mean turning to God, turning to source, turning to universe, turning to something that feels powerful and empowering, because if you're in a place of disempowerment, nothing can really happen from there, right? If you're just like, I'm a victim of my circumstances, there's nothing I can do about this. Well, that feels like crap, right? It doesn't feel good, and it's not going to get you any closer to anything that you want. So finding some source of inspiration, self-inspiration. If you don't believe in anything and you're like, that means nothing to me, then believe in your own self. Be your own parent. Be your own person inside of yourself that will be like your ideal best friend or your ideal mother or father. Be that for yourself. Or if you have a spiritual connection, be your own, God, be your own Jesus, or have that inside of you as a guiding light and a guiding force, because you'd be surprised how much, especially in places of desperation, like, you know, you hear of all these stories of like miracles, like these people were, you know, so sick, they were on their deathbed, and then all of a sudden something turned around, something changed. And I think a lot of times what's really happening there is that the beliefs just shift so drastically that body and mind are so interconnected that when the beliefs just shift so drastically and every part of you is on board, the body has to conform. It has to go in alignment with what the belief is. So, you know, I'm not saying, hey, like jump off a building and believe you're going to fly. And like, you know, I'm not saying any of that. But what I am saying is in these situations, you know, where you feel desperate and you just really radically shift your belief in yourself. And to Michael's point, use whatever it is that gives you the juice to feel empowered, to feel supported, to feel loved, to feel whole.
To feel worthy. That's what I think is really valuable from whether it's your traditional religion, like a church or like a temple, wherever you're going, if it allows you to feel worthy, that's very empowering.
Yeah.
Like, right. If you like really like, if I stop thinking about like, all right, God loves me, man, I must be worth something if God loves me.
Right.
Or if like whatever that is, that really is an invitation. But yeah, I feel like we could do like a whole nother piece on this. And also, if you guys want to see more of this, we've had such a blast this week. We had a really good response from it. I appreciate everyone that showed up. At this point, we literally had thousands of views and thousands of you tune in. So we appreciate that and want to continuously do this. So stay tuned. We're going to do more of this. Again, we have the GoFundMe up. I put it in the comments. You also see it in our profile if you guys want to donate and contribute. And you may have like kind of forgotten at this point what we're even talking about if you're not familiar, but Hurricane Helene happened September 26th or 7th. 26th. And since then, it's just been a constant recovery for the astral layer. Like we still don't have clean water. I mean, power is thankfully back on. We have Wi-Fi, but there's still been a subsequent response. Like even financially, been quite crippling for like across the board businesses, mine included. So we're doing all of this to add value and focus on what we can control. So if you guys want to contribute to that, and that's where you can also, we do our sliding scale coaching right now. So I don't want finances to be the barrier, especially for people in Western North Carolina to work with us. We need to go through insurance. You can contribute what you can to the GoFundMe. If you just found value in this, you can, and we'll continuously leave it up so you guys can share it, contribute to it. Great. And if not, we'll just keep putting out content that adds value. We got the newsletter that'll come out. We're going to go corner some fights. They'll bring home some championship belts for the fighters and just appreciate y'all. Where's my, I got to get it. Can you hand me my cup or whichever one's my tea?
This one's yours. We got our Polar Express mugs from Thursday night. Yeah, we actually have mugs. Cheers.
Cheers, y'all.
Thanks for joining.
So, Carrie, I'm going to see if you can turn everything off. I want to I'm just going to be lazy. I'm going to see if Carrie can do it. I know you can do it. Let me reword that. I know you can do it. I want to see you do it.
All right, hold on.
Yeah, you got this. We got this. Y'all.
Okay.
We got this.
Okay, there's that one. There's that one.
Amazon.
All right, and